We are going live. We are gonna go live. We're going live and we're going live. We're going live. Let's just go live. I don't know why I still think that's so funny. What's up, everybody? So we are gonna go into all of the stuff around what you can do to build athletic muscle. And I think that right away we gotta go into what is, the whole discussion around what is athletic muscle, and we've had a couple videos on it. And we've talked about improving coordination. We've talked about getting athletes to fire at faster rates. And how can you see it? Okay, so first of all, there is actually evidence that in recent research that you can see a muscle might be less force producing at a certain point. So if we get super hypertrophic, okay, and there's evidence that if we get a muscle that gets very large, okay, and if we can just identify, there's three types of hypertrophy. There's myofibrillar hypertrophy. There's sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. It does exist. Okay, sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is real, and then there's going to be tendon and ligament hypertrophy. So when we get a muscle to be extraordinarily large, right? So let's say we're doing a whole bunch of bodybuilding stuff and we're getting super swole, okay? There might become a point of diminishing returns on muscular size to power output. Okay, so essentially, the force exerted by a muscle during a voluntary action, the force exerted by a muscle during a voluntary action is going to be dependent upon the amount of motor units recruited. Okay, and so that means like the action and the rates at which they discharge, that's going to be like the action potential. Okay, so if these high threshold motor units get discharged, now this large muscle, which in theory would have more ability to produce more force, that's the whole goal, right? But there is in this research recently it's been shown that yes, larger muscles will produce more force, but there's also a point of diminishing returns. And some of this might be genetically based, and some of this might be based off of just training and environment, right? So if we have a large muscle that gets super swole, when that happens, and you're not doing athletic movements, or you're not doing movements that require very high speed actions, then that can lead to a diminishment in that overall power output from that specific muscle group or that specific muscle or coordination. Okay, so this goes back to actin and myosin link ups and how that can produce force, and that's really where a lot of the research comes from. Jason, if you're listening to this, I believe that this research, the actin myosin discussion, I believe is in the one spreadsheet that we have. So if you can find that article, you could post that into the chat here. But so we need to think about that from the aspect of how can we make sure that we are getting larger, more muscular, gaining lean muscle mass, okay? How can we make sure that we're gaining lean muscle mass? And then at the exact same time that we're gaining lean muscle mass, we have to comprehend the thought on rate coding, okay? So rate coding and the control of muscular force. And this goes back to enhancing that power output and the ability for your muscle to produce a very large amount of force, so that as we're gaining weight and as we're gaining lean muscle mass, if we're men or women, we need to make sure that we can still fire at high speeds so that we can execute things and improve our overall power output and our overall and that would lead to our overall performance, our overall goals. So if we have somebody who wants to increase their bench press, okay, let's say in our example, we have an athlete who comes into the gym and they just say, I want to deadlift more, I want to bench press more, but I've been plateaued at, let's say 405 or 315. I've been plateaued at 315 for 8 months. I can't deadlift more than 500 pounds. For the last year, I've just been stuck there. the first thing I want to see is sort of how twitchy are they? How well do they recruit? How coordinated are they? And what we'll do is we'll put them through a series of tests where they can they'll execute a bench press, they'll execute a deadlift, or they'll execute a back squat, and then we want to give them really interesting movements, just like a jump lunge, okay, or an explosive push-up, or a box jump series, and it doesn't even have to be overly complex. Thank you, Jason, so much for putting in that actin myosin research study so that you guys can actually click on that link to see what I'm talking about here. And so when we get an athlete who might be struggling with a bench press or might be struggling with that, if I see, okay, let's go and do clap push-ups, and they can bench 315, but they can barely do a clap push-up, or they can deadlift 500 pounds, but they can barely do a box jump without stutter stepping. That shows me there's a fairly large hiccup in their neural drive. Okay, their body struggles with a strength characteristic known as blast impulse. Okay, so they struggle with blast impulse. So that means when their GTO, their Golgi tendon organ, or their muscle spindles are aware of a large amount of speed or a large amount of force that's being brought into their system, their body sort of goes into shell shock and it doesn't respond well. That prevents them from being coordinated. So how can we, what's that low-hanging fruit then to take this athlete, to get them to bench more than 315, to get them to deadlift more than 500 pounds, get them to improve their squat? We've got to understand then, like, okay, they have a problem with high-speed movements, okay? And I'm actually gonna use an example. We have a kid who comes in and he just hit a big bench PR. He hit 425 for a double, and he's like 19 years old. He's huge. He's pulled over 600 pounds. And he had said, like, I'm struggling to hit a PR. I've sort of been stuck for a little while. Basically, we were like, all right, let's try and fix up your technique on the pull. Let's try to fix up your bench. And then all of a sudden, we said, all right, I want to see you do jump lunges. And he couldn't do a jump lunge. We had to get Jake and Taman to actually help this kid just to do a jump lunge. And it might sound absolutely wild because he can deadlift over 600 pounds, but if you look at what a jump lunge is, you're lengthening your hip, and then you're flexing, and you're lengthening, and you're flexing. You're learning how to recruit at higher speeds, and he couldn't do it. So now if we can get him to be a little bit more athletic, now that those high speed actions, okay, are going to train his body and train his muscle spindles. Basically, now his body's going to learn that those high speed movements are okay, and he's going to be safe. And because now he's going to be safe doing those high speed movements, now his body will utilize those high threshold motor units more effectively, which in turn will lead to greater force production. And in essence, he's going to be able to pull 700 pounds. He's going to be able to bench press 500 pounds. And so those are those things that we've got to bring in and understand from a physiological perspective to try and improve performance. And that even includes if we're trying to get as big as possible. If we've got guys like this kid comes in and he's not on gear, he's clean, he's natural, he's 100% natural. If that happens, then we need to be able to, yo, Jason, can you tell my mom I'm doing the live? She's calling me. She's outside the door, I think. My mom was calling me, sorry. So then we have to understand then that while we're doing these things, right, we've got to, damn, I lost my train of thought. Mom called me. We've got to be able to bring those into training and at the same time improve his blast impulse. And while we're improving his blast impulse, we need to continue to cater towards his strengths, and his strengths being that absolute strength and basically like power 15 plus. So that's stuff that we just got to bring up. So Kevin asked a really good question on this, and I think when we're thinking about rate coding, okay, and what rate coding does for building athletic muscle and what athletic muscle really is, we've got to be able to understand that it all comes back to our governors, okay? And some athletes, the best athletes in the world, have governors that really have a high ceiling. So muscle spindles and Golgi tendon organs. Those are the main areas that are gonna they're gonna have sensors that basically will tell your body it's okay, you can execute this movement at high speed. Otherwise, you'll shut off and you won't be able to execute the movement. And so I'm going to go back to those three methods of hypertrophy: myofibrillar hypertrophy, sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, and joint tendon ligament hypertrophy. Okay, so tendon and ligament hypertrophy. So the main factor is that the tendon and the ligament hypertrophy that we're going to build towards, that's where these sensors essentially live. That's where they're monitoring the amount of tension so that there's not so you don't blow out a muscle, you don't tear a muscle. Those muscle spindles live in there. Okay, so if we can train with high speeds, and we can do things like plyometrics, but also do things like really fast actions, like a power snatch or a clean or anything like that, or an unbroken bench press or an unbroken back squat, or even a touch and go deadlift. Now, if we're training that way, now the sensors realize everything's going to be okay, and we can do that. And you got to push to where that line's going to be, and then you can back off a little, and then you can push again, and then you can back off a little. So I wanted to explain that a little bit, but then also Kevin brought up the question, and Kevin's a channel member, so if you guys want, when we have a Friday live that's private where we go really, really in depth in a lot of this stuff, and you guys can ask me questions directly. There's a lot smaller of a group, so I'll answer those questions specifically. Kevin's one of those channel members. I think it's $10 a month, so it's what, $250 every time we do it. But Kevin's asking, roughly, how long would it take for an athlete to increase neural drive? And I think immediately we've got to realize that, one, that's going to be dependent upon genetics, right? That plays a pretty important factor. And genetics meaning what's your predisposition as an individual and your coordination ability. I like to sort of separate genetics from like what my mom and dad and cousins can do, like your family genetics. I honestly think don't have nearly as much of an impact on your physical ability as just like who you are as an individual. And what I mean by that is, like, we see a lot of athletes that come in the door where 2 or 3 of their brothers are just not athletic, or sisters are not athletic at all, and their parents aren't that athletic, but the kid's a freak athlete. So I think that's important to sort of make that distinction. But anyway, so that's going to have an impact on it. But then, Kevin, it's also going to go into how often are you training? And then if we're doing those leg power days and we're doing those upper body power days and we're focusing on technical coordination movements and plyometrics, that's also going to play a major role. So if we're doing, in peak strength, we have leg power day, upper body power day, athlete day, and impulse day. If we would just say that you're training 4 days a week and you're following those plans really, really pretty well, within 8 weeks, you're gonna see an adaptation of your body to be more coordinated. Now, you're gonna see that neural drive improvement pretty much right away. The issue would be to what degree, so you'll see it right away. Now, it might take you 6 months or 9 months or a year to really start to get to a level that you feel more proficient, and then it might take you 3 or 4 years to really get to that elite level. So I think that's got to be something that we all are aware of, that it will take a large amount of time. But there's some athletes that a lot of you guys, I'm sure. So let's say you come in and your back squat or something is very poor. A lot of athletes will respond within 3 to 4 weeks of improving their rate coding and their ability to put out more force and to be more athletic. I would even bring up, we've got a guy in the NFL right now who's training with us that within 3 weeks he added like 30 pounds to his power clean. And he said, just based off of his jumping ability, and this is within 3 weeks, his jumps have drastically improved his 40 time and his agility. So it's like, it very, very much so comes down to, what that athlete did in their past, how frequently they're training, and what type of training they're going to be doing. And so I did notice with back squat in particular, I do it on my leg strength day. So that's from Mike. How fast should I be increasing my squat weight? Should I increase 2.5 pounds or 5 pounds? So we're going to be doing actually a full video on tonnage and how to load. And I think that, plyometrics without any equipment is perfectly fine. Does sprinting ruin gains on the legs? No, it does not ruin gains on the legs. So going to Mike's question, okay, let's use this as an example, all right? I'm going to share a story of me growing up with my dad in lifting. my dad took us into the garage. He's like, all right, this is how you got to lift, blah, blah, blah. And he essentially was like, every time you bench press, R2, what's up? Every time you bench press, R2, let me answer this question, then pose that question again, or I'll try and answer it while running full speed. Okay, so that would be slow eccentrics. That would be pauses in plyometrics for R2. That would be jump series, R2. I would do a lot of jump series as well. And even things like depth lunges, drop lunges, stuff like that. Okay, so when we're talking about adding weight on the bar, I think a lot of you guys struggle with how do we get stronger? You just go to the gym and you do the same exercises all the time. You do the same exercises and you do the same weight. So you go in, you dumbbell bench the 45s or the 50s, and you do that for 6 months. And you're expecting to get stronger. And it is good. It's healthy. You're getting in, you're being active. That's great. But the problem comes in that if you really want to get stronger, you have to know how to put weight on the freaking bar. Okay, like we have to understand just basic progressive overload. You have to get stronger. Okay, so if we're squatting or we're bench pressing or we're deadlifting or we're doing a power clean or we're doing a full clean or a snatch or a single leg squat or a step up, if we just said, let's do 4 sets of 5 bench press, okay, or 4 sets of 5 back squat, my recommendation is that if I'm a intermediate or a novice athlete or lifter, okay, if I go in and I hit 5 reps of my back squat, I'm going to put 5s on each side, okay, so I'm going to put on about 5 kilos, so it's going to be 10 pounds, 5 kilos about, okay. So that's my first set of 5. Let's say I do it at 100 kilos or 220 pounds for the Americans. Well, now on my next set of 5, I'm going to do it at 230 pounds or about 105 kilos. Okay, and I get 5 again. Well, then my next set, I'm going to do it at 110. So I'm going to do like 242 pounds or 240 pounds. I'm going to do 5 again, and I get 5. I'm going to try and push it again. I'm going to go to 115. I'm going to 250, 255 pounds, and I'm going to try and get 5. And if I get 5, I'm going to write that down in my peak performance planner, which eventually we're going to be selling you guys. Okay, and then I'm going to write that down, and then the next time that I come in, I'm going to try and do 2 sets. My first 2 sets after my warm-ups, I'm going to try and do at that 255-pound back squat or bench press, whatever it is. Okay, so now you can sort of see how you're loading, and you see and you feel how you're responding. But if you're not adding weight to the bar during those rep schemes, yes, you'll get stronger to a point, but you're not really forcing a substantial adaptation. And I think that that's something that a lot of people miss. We get, people will say like, oh yeah, I'm just stuck at these weights. It's like, all right, well, there's another thing that happens then. Okay, so now you get stuck at, let's say you get the 4 sets of 5 and you can't get up, you get 255 pounds you can do for a set of 5, but you can't go to 260 or you can't go to 265. You can't do it. You do it for 2 weeks and you're stuck. Then they get frustrated. They just want to stop. They don't know what to do. So the next step that they've got to do then is say, all right, let's look at the back squat, okay? We did 4 sets of 5, and we're stuck at 265. We can't get it for 5. All right, well, let's go drop down, and we'll do 5 sets of 3. Okay, so let's do 5 sets of 3. So we do 3 at 255. Then we do 3 at 265. Then we do 3 at 275. And you still get it. And then you do 3 at 285. So now you do that for 2 to 3 weeks, and you're down at 5 triples, right? And you're just adding those weights, or maybe you do two sets at 275, 2 sets at 285, 1 set at 295. Then you keep it rolling, right? And then all of a sudden you get to a point where, well, now you're at 315. Maybe there's a little bit of a mental block. There's 3 big plates on the bar, and you can't get past it. You can't do it. You don't know what's going on. I still remember the first time I back squatted 315 for reps, and how freaking crazy that was to me that I could do that. And it was wild. It was so wild that when I did it, I racked it, and the weights slid off because we didn't have collars on the bar. They slid off our rack, and they smashed our stereo speaker. I bought a stereo at JCPenney for like $40, and it was a 5 CD changer. So we put 5 CDs in and just blast music the whole time that we were lifting. This was in 10th grade. And I remember it just shattering. And then we had to go in and get my dad's cassette player, and then had to save up our money to try and buy that. But so now we go to go back and use this example. We do 5 triples, and let's say we only get 2 reps of back squat at 315. Okay, so now we get 315 for double, and we never get it for triple. So the next block that you can do is you can change the variation. Okay, you can change the exercise. So instead of doing just normal back squats, you can do double bounce back squats. You can do pause back squats in the hole. You could do box squats. You could do front squats. But now what I would do, let's say you use front squats. Now you try and push your front squats for 4 sets of 5. And you do that for 3 to 4 weeks. And then you try and push your front squat for 5 sets of 3, and then you get to a point where you just stall out. And then that's like, if you're a novice or an intermediate lifter or athlete, that's the easiest way to go about making these gains. But you've got to have some system in place. Okay, and you've got to have that in place, and you've got to know when to change the reps. You got to know when to change these things. And then as you become more and more advanced, as you get more and more advanced over time, what's going to happen is that you've got to get more creative with those changes. You've got to get more creative with your weekly setup. You've got to get more creative with your exercises. You got to get more creative with your periodization. That's what we do in Peak Strength. That's what we do. If you guys go to peakstrength.app, you can download that. You get the app for free for 7 free days. And if you don't like it, you can cancel it at any time. But that's how we set that up in a more advanced manner to help you guys hit those big PRs. So I wanted to answer that question because I think it's a pretty simple fix that a lot of us are missing. Costas is asking, I only lift, should I snatch and jerk in one session or should I split them in 2? I would snatch and clean and jerk in one session. And I would squat 2 to 3 days a week. R2 is asking, is over 80% from your power clean max too much while doing technical coordination movements? No, I think some people will power clean about 85% of their max clean. It depends on the person, and it depends on your proficiency. How many weeks should we change the variation? Okay, so Mehdi is asking, let's say we go, I would say 4 to 6 weeks, then you can change that variation, or you can change the actual programming. And going into volume and tonnage is that there's a couple factors as to why periodization works. Okay, first of all, you can identify specific weaknesses that an athlete has, or as an individual who's lifting, you can identify those weaknesses, right? Okay. So now you can set up your programming to improve those weaknesses. So you can strengthen it with certain exercises. But then on top of that, the next reason why it works is that as you build through, you can change the reps, you can change the sets, you can change your rest periods. And then the next reason why it improves is that if we look at stuff like periodization, okay, as we slowly increase volume, okay, volume is king. Volume is totally king. It forces adaptation so well. It forces technical improvements. It forces, a lot of things to improve, right? And if we're just slowly increasing volume over 4, 8, 12 weeks, then the next aspect comes into line is that then, from what we're seeing with research, is that if we put in a deload week, a lot of people think that deloads work because you're decreasing that volume and your body has like that time to recover. And it's accurate to a point. It is 100% accurate to a point. But I believe, based off of what the literature says, is that there's more evidence that the change in volume is actually literally the mechanism that forces you to improve. So it's just changing that volume that forces your body to sort of get the shock, like, oh, okay, we're not doing as much. So it recovers well. And then as we go back up, we get even stronger. So the whole point of programming and periodization is that adapting the volume and adapting intensity and adapting those exercises and adapting rest periods and all that stuff, the changes in those parameters and those modulators, that's what's leading to better performance as an athlete. So when we're talking about improving your bench press or improving your back squat or becoming a better football player or becoming a better wrestler or whatever your sport is, all of those things have to be thought about when we're trying to build out the program, okay? And that's what's going to lead to that those big time PRs. Like I'll even use this example. I had surgery, and I don't know if you can see here, but I had surgery on my neck. And I knew it was like January 15th that I was going to have surgery on my neck. This is in 2021. Okay, so it's 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. Um, I knew that I wanted to deadlift 705 pounds, and I was concerned that based off of this surgery, that I would never be able to get and push to that 705-pound deadlift ever. Okay, I wanted to pull over 700. So basically, I knew once my schedule for my surgery was laid out, I had about, it was like 14 weeks. So essentially, I spent, 7 to 8 weeks just working on my technique, building volume, hitting high reps, hitting sets of 10, hitting sets of 8, hitting sets of 4, all the way up to 10, trying to build to like 605, 630 for a couple reps, right? And really zero in on that technique. And during that, on the back end, during my impulse day of training, I was doing more speed stuff. I was doing more jumps. I was doing more things, and I believe that an example of a deadlift, plyometric, would be like a top-down deadlift that's touch and go. So if I start at the top and I lower touch and go, lower touch and go, now that's like a way to lengthen and have a quick stretch shortening cycle. That's going to help me improve my deadlift. So then I got more creative with my variations, and I got more creative with my programming as I was progressing through those 14 weeks. And then essentially, by changing my volume and by changing the speed, I improved my rate coding for my body so that then I could learn that I could recruit high threshold motor units from that top down deadlift. I could use a dynamic start to improve my pull off the floor because now my body was learning these skills from that speed work. And then that in turn transferred to how I was executing that pull from the floor. So, and then that got me to pull 705 pounds. And so I think that changing your exercises and changing your rep schemes and stuff should really take place over 4 to 8 weeks. And during that time frame, you've got to zero in on what those specifics are going to be, and you've got to be able to identify all that stuff. And that's exactly what we're doing inside of Peak Strength. That's what we're doing with our programming here with all of our elite athletes. How do I train an athlete that's hypermobile? So Ryan McDonald, Sam, Ryan McDonald is one of those athletes. He's like this kid who's just super, super mobile. And to do that, I actually like shortening range of motion, making them squat to a box, sometimes trying to stop before they bounce out of the hole, doing more dumbbell work, a lot more dumbbell work, a lot of hypertrophy work, and trying to like literally tell them don't even stretch, like don't stretch, because they're so hypermobile and they have such elastic muscles. And then over time, if you can get them to be from hypermobile, just being mobile, that's when you're going to see their speed improve, and that's when you're going to see they're going to have less injuries and stuff like that. So that would be my answer to that. R2 is asking, how many times a week should you train in a football field, like cone drills and that kind of stuff, for your position? I think R2, it depends on the time of year. The football teams that we've worked with, it might be 2 to 3 days a week in the off season, maybe 2 days a week in the off season. But then obviously as it gets closer to the season, that's starting to increase. That's going to be a lot higher. So I would recommend, right now you're probably getting close to some of the combines, some of the tests. You probably should be out there 3 days a week while you're still lifting 4 days a week. Today I tried a chicken breast smoothie. Oh gosh, I've actually done that with I've actually done that with tuna and Frank's Red Hot sauce. So Kevin's asking, why would we use dumbbell snatch in the exposure phase? Increase variability and recovery. So Kevin, I would use a dumbbell snatch in the exposure phase for multiple reasons. First, it's absurdly easy as an exercise. So this is the other factor, is that when we're laying out our programming, we've got to look at exposure phase, comprehension phase. This is when movements that are easy should be done. Okay, so if we're doing simple movements early on, we can get really high volume. There's not going to be a lot of neurological fatigue because it's easier to execute these movements, so we can get more volume at an easier degree. And someone who, let's say someone doesn't want to do a barbell snatch, they can use a dumbbell snatch and they can execute that dumbbell snatch. And it does make it a little bit easier to recover. So that's the big factor. If I have someone who's never really snatched before, I might use the dumbbell snatch to get them to be explosive. And I might even superset that with with teaching them snatch technique. So now you're doing a dumbbell snatch, you're doing dumbbell snatch, you're learning that pop, you're learning that speed, and then we take dumbbell snatches out and they learn how to do that with an actual barbell. So that's why I would put that in the exposure phase. The exposure phase being essentially the first 4-week block of your overall programming. I wanted to tell you guys, I believe this is the last live before we start dishing these out. So if you guys are following, if you subscribe to the Garage Strength channel, if you subscribe to the channel, if you leave a comment on our videos, and you put on all of your notifications, you'll be eligible. And every Tuesday we're going to announce who's getting the swole shirt for the week, so that you guys can get as swole as possible. So we got this white one. We're making a tan one. So next week, someone's going to be getting this. We're going to announce who's getting that swole shirt based off of who comments, who likes, and who's got all their notifications on our actual channel videos. Hello, guys. Hope you had a nice day. By the way, what's your favorite sports? Mine's basketball and football. Okay, bodybuilding. Good for a basketball player who's skinny fat. I would say it's good to a point. I think lifting weights in general for basketball players is absolutely fantastic. You've just got to be aware. You know, make sure you're hitting those right movements and right exercises. R2. So I mean 4 gym days and 3 field training days. And should you do those field training efforts with full effort, or field training with full effort? I would say, yeah, 75 to 85%. I think is perfectly fine. And you could even do some of those before you would get in the weight room on your upper body day or before the impulse day. Could I run a sub 540 right now? Ooh, dude, I don't know. I've been jogging a lot, so I don't know. I'd have to actually train for that. That'd be an interesting video. Yeah, we still use a lot of the sled work. We're going to announce Tuesday the 18th, so in 2 weeks. My favorite sports are tennis and sprinting. I love tennis. I love sprinting. Both of them transfer phenomenally well to other sports. I think tennis is the absolute most impressive. If you guys, there's a new paper that just came out where they've labeled tennis players' water bottles, and they observed how many calories a tennis player burned in a match, world-class level. So these guys are burning 2,500 calories just in a match. Some of these high-intensity, crazy matches that they're in. And in a day, they're burning over 4,500 calories in a day. So they were consuming, just in the match, it was almost 2,000 calories worth of carbohydrates and stuff while they were actually playing. And this stuff just came out yesterday, which is pretty interesting. Let's see. What's the best use of training time for athleticism? Okay, so that's Johan. I don't know if you're just getting in here, but as far as, yes, you can build muscle and lose fat at the same time. As far as, it's not easy, but you can do that. As far as building athleticism, some of the big things here. So DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, is tuned in. He said, 4 months out from next season, I want to improve my speed. So I'll try and put these together here. If we would look at increasing speed and increasing power output, basically, the best way that you're going to do that is moving heavy weight fast, and doing jumps. Okay, those are the 3 best ways to make yourself more athletic. So if you can start off with just increasing your strength, and then you backdoor that improvement in your strength with heavy lifts that are fast. So now technical coordination movements. We do a power clean. We do a full snatch. We do a behind the neck jerk. Now we have to coordinate and be athletic through multiple different joints. And on top of that, we have rate coding. Again, what is rate coding? It's the force. Rate coding is essentially the force exerted by a muscle during a voluntary action. Okay, so the force exerted by a muscle during a voluntary action. So this depends on the number of motor units that then get recruited for that action, and the rate at which they discharge action potentials. Okay, so if we can train rate coding for our body, now if we can train rate coding for our body learns how to be more athletic because it has higher levels of force potential, okay, or of action potentials. So that's essentially training our body through moving heavy weights, because now we're training our body that this load is going to make us safe. We can increase the hypertrophy size of our tendons and of our ligaments, and our body will analyze and say this is okay. Then we can add in those high speed technical coordination movements, and then we can put in plyometrics. Okay, let's say bounds for distance, let's say single leg hops, let's say hurdle hops, let's say reflexive movements. So we can add in reflexive movements to do different types of series to improve coordination and coordination speed. Those are the main ways that we would hit this. Lithium finally hit that 90K front squat for 3 rep max. That's great, dude. That's and I think this is a big factor, is that when we are looking at a lift like front squats, people hate doing it. And there's a couple reasons why they hate doing it. One, it's front loaded. They're not comfortable. You almost feel like you're suffocating to a point. Two, some people, like, they don't have really good tension in their abs, so they sort of collapse forward. Their wrists might be hurting, and they don't want to work on that wrist mobility, so they try to avoid it. So my whole argument is, don't avoid front squats. Instead, do them more. Do them all the time. And if you could, in this case with Lithium, he hit that 90K front squat for a triple. He's got to look at it now using our examples from the past is, all right, let's say Lithium can do 3 triples on front squat at 90 kilos. And then let's say, all right, Lithium, the next goal that you got to have, I shaved my head this morning, but I got some of the stuff from my my sweatshirt, from my hoodie, stuck in my low level of hair. So now with Lithium, he should work towards doing more sets of 3 at 90 kilos. Or what Lithium could do is say, all right, let's do 4 sets of 3 at 90 kilos, and then let's try and push to 100 kilos for a set of 5. And if I can do that, and maybe Lithium right now is front squatting once a week. Well, I'm going to challenge Lithium. I think you should go 4 weeks and front squat 3 days a week. And 2 of those other days might be slower or lighter or whatever, but you're just getting more volume in and you're training those patterns a little bit faster. So yeah, a lot of people don't want to front squat, but it's a very, very quick way to improve your overall performance. And exactly, just power through what you're feeling. Obviously, there's a point there where you don't want to just get hurt, but you do want to try and push that quite a bit. And Christopher, yeah, I did answer this earlier. Which knees do we do most frequently? I would say, I think here's my problem is, like, we've already always done Nordic hamstring curls well before we ever did knees over toes, guys. So Nordics we're always doing, but I would say sled pull backwards. And again, we always did sled pulls, sled pushes, but going and seeing Ben, that definitely did have an influence on pushing and pulling the sled a little bit more, for sure. So I would say, I would say Nordics and then sled pull push. Okay, so for moves like front squats, would using kettlebells over bars provide more challenge to core strength? So Marcus, they would. I would say I would be weary of doing that frequently. I think that you can just put more load on the bar. If you put heavier weights on the bar, that's going to challenge your core quite a bit before you get super fancy like that. So I would say do that first. Morty is saying he's limited with that pain in the wrist, and I would say try to lengthen your tricep, try to lengthen your lats, and also in through your elbow joint. And one thing that you can do is even put straps on the bar here. So you can put straps on. We sell our garage strength straps that you could wrap around the bar and use those, and then just slowly lead into improving that mobility. Another thing you could do is, with like our power elastic. Okay, so you can push down the power elastic and you can wrap the handle around your wrist and push it up into the bar and push the band down, and that's going to help improve that mobility through your wrist. So that's something that I would recommend doing as well to improve that front rack. It takes time though. It's going to take a lot of time, and you might start here with 2 fingers on and then slowly get to the point of 3 or 4 fingers. But we do have an old video where we talk about that quite a bit. DDP, should that be divided throughout the off season, 1 month being strength? So here's the other thing. New research just came out on, and I also think this is inside of my spreadsheet, Jason, if you are listening. There's research on not just programming, so the way DDP is asking is basically, should I just do linear periodization where I do strength, where I do power, then I do speed? There's a ton of research now that's showing integrating all of that together is really important. Okay. And the more you do that, the better you're going to respond. So, DDP, you should be focusing on strength, size, and speed all in one program. That's what we do here at Garage Strength. That's what we do inside the app. It's all built around strength, speed, power, everything inside of Peak Strength. Again, DDP, what I would recommend for you, get the app, try it for 7 free days. Do it for 7 days. You don't like it, just cancel it. But I would recommend doing that because that's going to help you a lot with that training. 34, coming off sports hernia surgery. Is there any hope for me to be a freak athlete? John, absolutely there's hope. Steve, what's up? Boom. How are you doing, buddy? John, for sure. I believe there's hope for you. Jake's about to go under the knife here for sports hernia as well. I think that you've just got to take it slow. Keist, what's up? How are you doing? I think with sports hernias, you just got to take it slow. You've got to be aware of what's causing that pain. And just, Alex Rose had a sports hernia surgery. Okay. He had a sports hernia surgery and PR'd that same year. Okay. He hit a PR the year that he had the surgery. So he had the surgery in February and he PR'd in June. Okay. And then he came back and he, went to the Olympics. And on top of that, he was the first Pacific Islander to qualify for the World Championships final after he had that sports hernia surgery. I think the big thing is like getting that stuff done. Hey, thank you very much, Jason, for putting that periodization research, so you guys can read that if you want. Also, I am going to be presenting at a NSCA conference in the fall. Steve, busy at work. Hey, that's a good thing though, right? That's what we always say. Old guys always say, hey, it's good to be busy at work. Steve's had 2 sports hernias. He's still working hard. Absolutely. That's big. Best exercise for knee strength from Protham. I would say single leg squat, slow eccentric. Single leg squat, slow eccentric. Protham. Single leg squat, slow eccentric. Are fast squats with much lower weight a good way to increase verticals? Yeah, for sure. It's a good way. It's not the best, but it's a good way. I would do, let's say like 60% unbroken, 5 sets of 3. Protham, we've already answered that. Single leg squats with a slow eccentric. Single leg squats with a slow eccentric. So this is the life. This is the life currently of as a coach, is that I've got to get Jaime to the gym. Jaime is our world champion discus thrower. So I've got to call her Uber because I can't pick her up this morning because I'm doing a YouTube live with you guys. So I'm calling Jaime and Uber to get her here to the gym so that we can get to training. So let me call that. Just called it. There we go. Hey, Dane, hope you and the athletes are well. Best resources in regards to nutrition and Excel use science. So Omega's asking, I would say, dude, I really like our high performance nutrition program is absolutely freaking incredible. A lot of athletes use that for exercise science. I also think probably the best resource, I would say there would be 2. It would be Lane Norton would be my favorite resource for nutrition. Lane Norton would be my number 1, and number 2 would probably be Alan Aragon. I think it's very hard to go wrong with those guys as far as nutrition is concerned. I also think Dr. Rhonda Patrick. Those would be my 3 mainstays that I don't. I always go to what does Lane Norton say, what's Rhonda Patrick saying, and what's Alan Aragon saying. I don't think you can go wrong with them because they're up to speed on everything. Smokey Live. This is a great question because Ramadan is occurring right now. Okay, so he's asking, how do we train? How could Muslims train during Ramadan? Brother Ferris, who is sort of like a digital friend of mine that we talk to each other online, what he tries to work on is basically obviously just doing probably more plyometrics and body weight movements during his training, and then obviously doing that at nighttime. I also work with Mustafa Hassan, who's one of the best shot putters in the world. He just threw a PR 2165, and he's from Egypt. And Mustafa just hit a big PR, like 3 weeks ago. And so he started Ramadan recently. And so what he tries to do is essentially does all his training at night, fasts throughout the day, no water or anything, eats quite a bit at night, and then tries to get as much sleep into the next day as he can when he wakes up, because he walks around at like 130, 135 kilos. So he's got to try to maintain his weight at a certain degree. So I think the other factor is that during Ramadan for Muslims, they've got to look at it like, make it through. You know, what's the priority? If you're faithful towards Islam, like it's probably more important to you that you focus on your faith than your training. So I would also say factor that into everything as well. Um, it's a it's tough, but pretty much every faith has some period of feast or fasting and feast. With Christians, it was Lent and giving something up, and then there is a fasting period as well. So it's just figuring that out. I think that's important. What workouts can I do with a sprained ankle on a leg day? So a sprained ankle on a leg day, what I would do, Medi, best way to increase your squat if your posterior chain is weak, back squat some more, heels elevated. And that's what I was going to say to Hezi God, is that squat with the heels elevated. That'll help with that sprained ankle probably. It'll help you get that full range of motion. And also I would do more tibialis curls. That would also improve that position as well. And then probably easy sled pushes to try to bring some blood flow into that ankle. That would be another one. More to life. On the topic of injury, I tore my rotator cuff. So I did want to ask you guys this. I think that we should come out with almost like a series where it's like every month or every other month we talk about how to handle injuries, basically how to handle injuries off of this. And a couple of you guys had asked about sports hernias, knee, ankle, and now we're talking here about rotator cuff. More to Life is saying he tore his rotator cuff last year, and he's still doing physio once a week. He can't do anything overhead. Can you still become a freak? Yes, you can become a freak, More to Life. And I want you to realize too, it's like over time I would do a lot of pressing. If I have a rotator cuff injury, I would do a lot of pressing with a neutral grip. I would do it with a band around dumbbells. I would do it with a Swiss bar or a football bar, as they call it. And I think that if you can do that, you can build into doing neutral grip overhead stuff. Well, if you can do neutral grip overhead stuff, then you can start to even push even further. But you don't even need to do overhead stuff to become a freak athlete. I think that's important. So Keist, is it too late to build athletic muscle as you get older, say 30 plus? I think, so we're terming this athletic fitness. Okay, so athletic fitness in my mind, Keist, is what you're talking about. Okay, so if I'm doing Uber's texting me. If I'm doing athletic fitness, right, and I'm training to become more coordinated, I really think as we age and we get to the point of 35, 40, 45, we should be doing plyos. We should be doing skips. We should be doing exercises to help become freak athletes. But then also, we need to do that just so that our brain and our coordination between our brain and our muscles is still at a high degree, because that's like the first thing that we lose, is that we lose that high rate coordination. So Keist, I think you train that and you're going to realize when you're 40, 45, you're probably going to be more athletic than when you were 30, because you're doing more work, you're doing more volume in those complex exercises. So that would be more to life. Thank you. The app is great. Thank you for that. Ralph loves food. Can you do a video on muscle snatches, the technique and the benefits? Yeah, we could do that. I think it's like the unsung hero of weightlifting based off of technique, based off of even determination of readiness. I think there's a lot of different factors that go into muscle snatches that can lead to a very high level of performance. So yeah, I think that's for sure. Yeah, and Econ just said that. Elaine Thompson, Fraser Price, Majinga Kambunji. She turned 30 last year and she just won the indoor world title. First world title for her at the age of 30. So like keep that in mind. A lot of technique and a lot of high-speed stuff happens when you're older. You just got to be. And you is asking, do fast reps help with building athleticism? Yes, fast reps can. Kevin's part of our membership. I forget if Keist is in there as well. Keist might be. No, Keist is not a member of the channel. But if you guys want to join our channel membership, every Friday we do a private live where I'm going to try to, as we're actually getting live streaming equipment where we're going to be putting up programs and putting up research paper up on the screen so that you guys can see what we're really talking about. And Kevin just asked us, he's a channel member. It's $10 a month if you guys want to sign up for that channel membership, and you can join those lives. Benefits of snatching compared to cleans for athletes that don't use much upper body or overhead strength. Okay, so what I think the benefits for a snatch, even if you don't use a lot of upper body, the snatch is a longer pull. I would argue it's a little bit more of an athletic movement, just a little bit. Cleans are extraordinarily athletic, okay? Keith is on Discord a lot, so you can also join Discord, but channel memberships, let's try to push some of those channel memberships too. Thank you, Keith, for being on Discord, though. That Discord server is active. So anyway, I look at the snatch as, because it's a longer range of motion, it's a longer pull, you've got to have a longer rate of force production, okay? Well, you have a little bit longer rate of force production, but you have to be more coordinated, and you've got to have good mobility and good stability overhead, so you have to have more dynamic trunk control. I think it's a little bit of an argument, like maybe it's not the absolute better than cleans, but I probably would say it is. Let's see, what was this question? Would you be able to do a video on clean and jerk volume reps? Clean and jerk, okay, yeah, we could do that at some point for sure. What are the all-time best lifts? Okay, so if I would lay out all-time best lifts, right? And I have a Dane's platform. I see these things called Dane's platform where I would just point and shoot and talk in front of my cell phone. This is going way back, like way back. So I actually talked about this. If I was stuck on a deserted island, what would those lifts be? So if, Adam's asking what would be, so let's lay out 3. Okay, so let's say there's 3 lifts. Ooh, this is going to be a tough one. Let's say I'm a leg dominant athlete, but I can only pick 3 lifts. What could I do? What would I do? Okay, but I'm an athlete. I would do this. Okay, I would go, and you guys might be able to guess the one. I would do a snatch or a snatch variation. Okay, Trevor, when's the peak strength update being released? Monday. So the new update will be coming out on Monday. So if you guys get into the app today, you could actually play around with the app. You got those 7 free days of training, and we're getting a new update coming out on Monday. That new update's going to help. You're going to be able to track your volume, and you're going to see what your volume is. We're going to have badges in there too, and you're going to get badges. So we're going to be at points where you're going to get rewarded for having X number of workouts and even hitting goals and lifts like that. So that's coming out on Monday. So if you guys download the app today, you get those 7 free days of training. You'll be in there when the update happens. And if you're in there when the update happens, and you can see if you want it. If you don't want it, you can cancel during those 7 free days. If you like it, you can keep training. Now, going back to this question. First exercise, snatch. If you do the snatch, that's going to cover high-speed movements. That's going to cover technical coordination. It's going to cover mobility. It's going to improve your stability in your shoulders. It's going to improve a lot of different, just fantastic qualities to make you more athletic. Second, bench press. Bench press is underrated. Yes, people underrate it because they'll say, oh, everybody just wants to bench press, and they equate everything to being a meathead. But they forget, it's absolutely incredible. I will say that if I'm in a pulling movement or a pulling sport, I would take a pull-up or a rope climb over a bench press. But if I'm in a pressing sport, I'm going all in. I'm going all in on bench press. Now, next one, the final one. Okay, if I'm an athlete, single leg squats. Single leg squats would be that third key exercise. Steve, I'm just playing a game here where we're talking about the top 3 exercises that I can only pick 3. So single leg squat would be the third one. And the reason why I want to use it is because you're in a unilateral position. You can still gain a lot of strength in your posterior chain. Like we've had Lucas Warning here, DK Hoagland, each single leg squat over 500 pounds. So you can get a lot of absolute strength work. You can light up your glutes, your hamstrings. Strict press, great exercise. I'm just trying to pick those top three. So Zach's a boulderer, and he uses bench press, throw, and unbroken single leg squats on Smith machine. Yeah, to potentiate an absolute freak. I would challenge you to do unbroken single leg squats without the Smith machine because it would be even more complex for you. Bench press throw, med ball throw, glute ham, med ball benches, explosive push-ups. We've been using the mobility band, so the black band, the mobility band for our power elastics, and we've been doing explosive push-ups to benches. So Keith is saying that if you buy it through the website, you should pay the U.S. prices. Yes, if you get it through the website. How would you change periodization for an athlete that isn't competing, has no specific time to peak, and just wants to get better and better overall? So Marcos, this is a great question. Gosh, this freaking dude, this is the thing that drives me nuts with Uber is like wanting me to get to the gym by like 10:15, and sometimes the Ubers are not responsive and they're annoying. But anyway, okay, I think one of the major things that you can do if you're like training for athletic fitness and you don't have a peak point, right? You still should follow some plan, and you have to identify what your goals are going to be. Or do you want to, have better health? Do you want to have better cardio? Do you want to be more explosive? Do you want to improve your bench press? So here's a good example. Okay, here's a great example. Currently, I definitely want to be able to complete a full half marathon without stopping. That's my number one goal. Okay. I also had something pop up on my time hop of me dumbbell military pressing the 140s during coronavirus. When Corona first hit, I hit 140s for 8. So now I have two goals. I want to run a half marathon, and I want to be able to military press the 125s for 8. I just want to get back to that because I'm a lot lighter. I'm 25 pounds lighter than I was during Corona. So those are my major goals. So I think that's the big question here is that even if you don't have a peak date, I think it's important to still establish goals so that you can, how much could Victor Vaughn bench? What a freaking amazing question. That's a great question. Yeah, a lot. But I think even if you don't have those specific peak points, it's still establishing goals to work towards. And for me now too, it's like, all right, if I have an upper body goal, I have a cardio goal, I should have a plyometric goal as well. And then I'm basically covering like all of my bases. All right, if I have a plyometric goal, I should be able to get through hurdle hops at the third height without dying. Single leg stair jumps, I've got to improve upon. I got to improve my skipping ability. So I think it's really important for that. Will you make a release stream for the new peak update? Damn, Keist. So you're saying, Keist, comment below. Yeah, have them compete in the weight room. That's a good one, Steve. You're saying like we would stream when it comes out how it would improve, how it is improving the app, and maybe we have like a theoretical workout to just show that. Is that what you're saying, Keist? Does NoFap help in sports? We actually did a video on this like 2 years ago. You should check that out. Would working absolute strength or more complex movements be better for an athlete in a high cardio sport, field hockey? Field hockey is more similar to soccer. Complex movements, absolute strength movements are fantastic for field hockey because it's going to help with your speed. It's going to help. There's so much cutting involved and there's so much trunk control involved with field hockey that I absolutely... Damn, Prath, chill. Yeah, Pratham, you've been asking a lot of questions repeatedly, and I'm providing those answers. Going back to the field hockey question, 100% there. It's fantastic for those things. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Coach, I can do more than 15 reps on the single-legged squat. I'm afraid it might ruin leg gains because of endurance. So Econ, go down to like 5 sets of 5 on each leg and try and push the weight. Make sure that you're using the single leg roller and the single leg balance pad from Garage Strength because that's going to be more stable and you're going to be able to hit that knee. It's going to be safer on your knee as well. That's why the foam, the density of the foam that we use is very highly, it's extremely dense and it protects that knee capsule when we're touching down so we can get full range of motion without really putting ourselves in a bad position. And that's why that's how we designed the single leg squat stand. Keith, let me know if that's what you're thinking about. Okay, so he is. He commented there. Okay, I got to talk to Trevor about that. Maybe we would do that on Tuesday. Um, Release stream of what the update adds, showcase the improvements, new features. Update adds, new features. Okay, maybe we'll do that next Tuesday. We'll start that off next Tuesday. Weight wise, like 300-pound snatch or whatever. This is for Adam. Coach, what are your best lifts as far as. Okay, so my best snatch is 145 kilos. I was in a competition actually. I did hit 148 off of one box, but I 145 in a competition, so that's 320 pounds. Best behind the neck jerk, 212 kilos, which is what, 450? No, 210 is 460. So it's 468 for behind the neck jerk, bench press 500 plus, deadlift 705. My power clean was trash, 160. Back squat, power lifter, wide stance 600 for 6, low bar. My best full depth is 243, I believe. I was not a great squatter because of my leg length. Yeah, so that's my answer to that one. Stamina exercise for basketball, I would do hill sprints probably. Hill sprints or get on the assault bike. Assault bike, high intensity intervals, 15 minutes, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. I'll take one more question here. Okay, so Locks is also bringing up that ankle injury. So I think while handling an injury, I think it's important to note what is that level of pain and how's that pain monitored. Okay, so I would say around 7 is where you're going to start to see it be very detrimental. Below 7, you can manage it and still train. Okay, so if pain is at a 7, you've got to be aware, like, you don't want to push past that point. If it goes past a 7, now if I go past a 7, that's where I've got to change my training and totally get away from my ankle injury and just focus on rehabilitating my ankle and then just doing basically upper body work, PA presses, stuff like that. If you're a weightlifter with an ankle injury, you can do things like muscle snatches, flat-footed push presses, flat-footed power snatches, stuff like that. That would be my answer. Okay, pick one plyometric, one heavy lift. One heavy lift would be a pause front squat. One plyometric would be depth drop to hurdle hops. All right, I'm heading out. Thanks for tuning in this week. Friday, we have our private lives. You guys can become channel members if you join. If you guys want, you can download peakstrength.app and you can get 7 free days of training. Steve's saying, I was in Dubuque and saw Dennis Hall this weekend and told the head coach for the University of Dubuque about you and trying to send them your way for strength and conditioning. Thank you so much. Dennis Hall, I think he used to fight in the UFC. If I remember correctly, he might even have like narcolepsy or something like that. Is that the same guy, Steve? Let me know if that's the same dude. I'm pretty sure I remember him. I could be totally false though with that. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. I appreciate that 100%. So we got a new update coming out on Monday. Next Tuesday, we'll try and do a feature of that and show you guys what we're doing inside of Peak Strength. Again, you guys can head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store, the Apple iOS Store. 10 times Greco champ. All right. You can download that. You get 7 free days of training. And if you don't like it, you can cancel it whenever you want. Brand new stuff coming out in there. You guys, I would also refer back to the beginning of this video where we really dive deep into our discussion around training for Olympic silver medalists. Yes, you're right, Steve. Training for becoming more athletic. Until next time, peace.